Story 1. Let me take you back in time, over a decade ago, when the events of this story unfolded. As a resident of Saskatchewan, Canada, known for its bone-chilling winter temperatures, I was filled with excitement when the opportunity arose to visit my dad and stepmom in Texas during the Christmas season. Little did I know that their winter weather would feel like a mild spring to me. Throughout my stay, I found myself comfortably wearing shorts and tank tops, relishing the milder climate. Now, let me introduce you to the key players in this tale. Firstly, there's me, a 16-year-old girl embodying the stereotype of Canadian politeness, unless someone pushes me too far. Next, we have the entitled mother, who epitomizes the notorious Karen archetype. Then, there's the entitled father, a firm believer in outdated gender roles, convinced that women should unquestioningly obey and serve him. Lastly, their son, an innocent-looking 6-year-old who unwittingly becomes part of this encounter. Now, let's set the stage. It's the week after Christmas, and we find ourselves at a large department store. Here I am, donning a pair of shorts that were not excessively short, mind you, but were thoughtfully purchased by my mom, a Catholic teacher who always ensured I dressed appropriately. I also wore a tank top that revealed a hint of cleavage, once again chosen by my mom. I was out shopping with my stepmom, who needed to pick up some groceries. As I perused the clothes section, immersed in my own world of music with both earphones plugged in, an unexpected interruption jolted me from my reverie. The ensuing conversation was so bewildering that it's etched firmly in my memory. Entitled Mom, where are your parents? Me, I'm sorry. What? Is something wrong? Entitled Mom, I asked, where are your parents? Or are you too clueless to understand? Me, lady, I don't know what your problem is, but please leave me alone. Entitled Mom, no, where are your parents? Me, may I ask why you want to know? Entitled Mom, because you're too young to be by yourself and dress like that. I'm calling the police. Me, what? Listen, lady, I'm old enough to browse clothes alone, and there's nothing wrong with my outfit. Entitled Mom, yes, there is. Didn't your parents teach you to respect yourself? Me, okay, listen, I'm not from around here. I'm just visiting for Christmas. Please leave me alone. Entitled Mom, no, you're lying. I know you're from here. You need to learn to dress appropriately for the weather. Just then, a towering figure, over 6 feet tall, approached. He was accompanied by his son, whom he was dragging along. It's important to note that, at the time, I stood at a mere 4 feet 7 inches, significantly shorter than my peers. Nevertheless, anyone could see that I was unmistakably a teenager, not a child. Entitled Dad, what's happening here? Entitled Mom, I was simply telling this young girl that she should wear proper clothes. Me, and I was just explaining that I'm not from here, I live in Saskatchewan. Entitled Dad, that place doesn't exist. Stop lying. My wife is right. We homeschool our child because of people like you. We don't want him to be corrupted. Me, actually, it does exist. It's a province in Canada. Entitled Mom, be quiet. No one asked for your opinion. Me, asterisk, turning to the dad, asterisk. So you think people like me are the reason you homeschool your son? Maybe if he went to school, he would learn where Canada is. Entitled Mom, asterisk, starts screaming, even louder, asterisk, you're from here, and you enjoy dressing like that. You're a cheap girl, and your mother is probably the same. At this point, my anger reached its peak. My mom, being a single parent as my dad was never truly present in my life, had raised me to be strong. Say what you want about me, but when it came to defending my mom, I had no mercy. With determination, I marched towards the front of the store, knowing that employees would be there to assist. The entitled mom and dad trailed behind, still clutching their son's hand. Me, listen carefully, and listen well. I am not from Texas. I am from Saskatchewan, Canada. I do not have your southern accent. I am not a child, and I am neither dressed nor behaving inappropriately. The entitled dad, seething with anger, invaded my personal space, his voice escalating as he threatened to have me arrested. His proximity was so close that I could feel the spray of his spit hitting my face. He then grabbed me, claiming I would be imprisoned from that moment onward. That was when I took action. Swiftly, I delivered a well-aimed knee strike to his vulnerable area, and as he crumpled in pain, I followed up with a powerful kick to his face. He lay on the ground, one hand shielding his injured face and the other gripping his pelvis. I had landed a solid blow, and I felt a sense of pride. By this time, security had been summoned, and the police were on their way. As an officer engaged in a conversation with me, I requested that they contact my mom and bring her to the front so she wouldn't be searching for me. The request was fulfilled, and as I waited for her arrival, I began explaining the incident to the officer. I presented my identification, which clearly indicated that not only was I indeed from Saskatchewan, but I was also only 16, thus a minor. Oh, how much more trouble the entitled dad was about to find himself in. My mom arrived at the scene, seething with fury. The officer inquired if I wished to press charges, and I asked about the process as a minor residing in Canada. The officer explained the necessary steps, and I agreed to move forward. However, I also expressed my concerns to the officer regarding the well-being of the young boy. If his parents reacted in such a hostile manner in public, it raised serious doubts about his treatment in private. The officer acknowledged my concerns, understanding the gravity of the situation. Emergency medical services were summoned for both the entitled dad, who may have suffered a broken nose courtesy of my kick, and for me, as a precautionary measure to assess any potential injuries. I was given a clean bill of health. The boy's grandmother was contacted to come and pick him up. She appeared genuinely kind and sincerely apologetic for her son and daughter-in-law's behavior. As I departed with my mother, I glimpsed the entitled dad and mom seated in the back of 2 police cars. Aftermath. While I don't possess all the intricate details, I can share what I know about the aftermath. In my case, the entitled mom was found guilty of harassment, and the entitled dad faced charges of harassment and assault against a minor. Moreover, the police conducted a search of their vehicle and property, which resulted in the discovery of a significant quantity of illegal drugs. As a result, they faced additional legal consequences that would likely keep them behind bars for an extensive period of time. Story 2. 5 years ago, when I was just a 19-year-old university student, an intriguing series of events unfolded in my life. Let me take you back to that time, as I paint the picture of a tale filled with passion, deceit, and the pursuit of justice. It all began when I started dating an old friend, an 18-year-old cheerleader who attended a different school. Her name doesn't matter for this story, but her dedication to cheerleading was undeniable. With practices scheduled 2 or 3 times a week, I would often visit her school, enjoy a lovely dinner together before her practice, wait patiently for a couple of hours, and then accompany her home. Before our relationship began, my girlfriend had a previous connection with a senior member of her cheerleading squad. Let's call him Chad. Although they never officially dated, their involvement ended a few months prior to us getting together. However, Chad's presence continued to linger, occasionally causing turmoil in our lives. One fateful day, as I approached my girlfriend's school, Chad coincidentally emerged from the building. Our eyes met, and he glanced at me with a condescending smirk, his gaze sweeping from my head to my toes. This encounter proved to be the last straw, as I had endured his derogatory comments, his attempts to discredit me, and even his persistent pursuit of my girlfriend after we became an item. The accumulated frustration reached its tipping point, and I felt compelled to share the entire ordeal with a close friend, whom we'll refer to as Dan. Dan, a dependable confidant and someone who had recently entered military service in the regimentation and discipline department, sympathized with my plight. He initially suggested investigating Chad's platoon for minor rule violations that could land him in the detention barracks for a few days. Petty revenge would have sufficed, as my mind hadn't ventured much further at that point. However, fortune smiled upon us when I casually mentioned Chad's Instagram handle, which contained a racial slur. Dan's keen instincts immediately identified this as a significant offense, one that could potentially lead to a 14-day stay in the detention barracks. In that moment, a spark of mischief ignited within me. You see, during my time spent with the cheer squad, I had absorbed various tidbits of information, storing them away in the recesses of my mind. One such detail pertained to Chad's military journey. He had once been assigned to a prestigious, arduous unit similar to the renowned Rangers, but had dropped out midway for reasons unknown. Sharing this intriguing revelation with Dan, he promptly accessed Chad's medical file. While he couldn't disclose the precise cause of Chad's medical downgrade, he cryptically confirmed the presence of a joint injury and a mental condition. Thus began a meticulous 4-month period of gathering evidence for Dan's investigation. I meticulously captured screenshots of every Instagram post featuring Chad participating in physically demanding cheerleading competitions after his enlistment, as well as images of him reveling at parties and clubs. These pieces of evidence could potentially challenge his claimed physical and mental incapacity. On Dan's end, he diligently built a strong case against Chad. The mounting charges amounted to approximately 15 months of potential detention, attracting the attention of higher-ranking officials who sought to uncover how Chad had managed to circumvent the system. Eventually, Chad grew suspicious of the unfolding events, possibly triggered by the additional medical examinations he was suddenly required to undergo. In an attempt to cover his tracks, he hastily deleted his Instagram posts and locked his account. However, unbeknownst to him, I had already secured all the evidence needed to expose his deception. With an airtight case against Chad, a military court convened to pass judgment. Presented with two options, he had to make a pivotal decision. He could either serve an additional 2 years in the military, potentially being deployed to a more stringent environment, or he could choose to settle the matter by paying a hefty fine of $40,000. In the end, Chad opted to pay the fine. While part of me had hoped he would be compelled to put his life on hold for another 2 years, serving his military tenure, the grand scheme of justice prevailed. I had achieved far more than I initially sought, content with the outcome that had unfolded before my eyes. Story 3. My school had a tradition, and I'm not sure if it's odd or not, but each year we had kind of a mini valedictorian award, starting in middle school. I was in the gifted program, so several of us had 4.0s, so the award was given to whoever had the highest overall GPA on the 100-point scale. I have always been very competitive by nature, so I set my sights on winning this award in the 7th grade. However, there was a bit of competition. Let's call him Todd. Todd had really good grades as well, with the top spot usually bouncing back and forth between the two of us. It was so close that every single quiz, exam, and homework assignment had the potential to dethrone one of us while lifting the other. I had an average of 98 something, as did he. Todd had a bit of an edge, however. See, Todd's mom was known for being a bully. She would yell, scream, berate, and openly mock any teacher who dared to give Todd a lower grade than me. But that isn't all. Todd's mom was also a teacher at our school. She would openly defy and berate her own colleagues, should they not provide whatever grade she wanted for Todd. Now, usually the school would avoid giving a child a class with their mother, but sometimes this was unavoidable. Naturally, we ended up in a class with his mother as the teacher. This was a world history class, one which required several papers, tests, etc. By the end of the year, Todd and I had been neck and neck in this class. But I noticed something. I consistently outperformed Todd by several points on any objective learning assessments, fill-in-the-blank tests, multiple choice, etc. However, somehow Todd consistently outperformed me on written subjective learning assessments, papers, essays, etc. Being a young and ignorant kid, I just assumed he was better at writing. That is, until our final assignment rolled around. All our tests had been taken, all our quizzes and homework assignments graded, all our papers submitted and graded. The semester was functionally complete. I held a fraction of a point over Todd in the class, which put me overall ahead in the valedictorian race. But Mommy Dearest couldn't have that. So, with 3 days left of the year, she assigned a last-minute 2-page paper. Short and simple. I submitted mine, and received a 95. Fair enough. I found out that Todd got a 100, just enough to put him ahead of me in the class, and in the valedictorian race. I was frustrated, so I asked Todd to see his paper repeatedly, desperate to find ways to improve to better my chances the next year. He refused, again and again. Then I remembered, when his mom handed the papers back to us, she never gave one to Todd. He hadn't done the paper, it was purely an assignment contrived to put him ahead. Now comes the revenge. Our school had just transferred to a paperless gradebook system the year before, so this was the second year on it. The principal was determined to make this cost-efficient, so after the first trial year, he didn't even bother restocking the teachers with physical grade books. That way, he could add the amount saved from physical books to the total amount that the new paperless system was saving the school. Now, during this time, I also worked. I had a family member who owned a small local ISP, and I would help out at every opportunity. I loved computers, and still do. Now, working with this family member equipped me with much more networking knowledge than other kids my age, and even most adults. I decided that with this power came great responsibility. I was going to right this grievous injustice. So, I started digging. I got on a school PC and started going through the network. Turns out, the school had wanted to save as much money as possible while going paperless. So, they didn't hire a professional technician, consultant, or anything. One of the dads just volunteered, in exchange for a reduced tuition charge private school. So, this system was just a nightmare. There was no dedicated network for sharing grades. There was no password protection on any files. There were no administrative restrictions on any files, nothing. What he did was just share a single directory on the headmaster's computer. That directory held the entire gradebook for each and every class of each and every grade, kindergarten through 12th grade. I thought this was too good to be true. Surely there was a backup somewhere. So I went to the school's port switcher, which was just in an unlocked closet. I checked around, expecting to see a server or a set of drives set to automatically back up whatever is shared on the network. Nada. Now, I was in a rage. I had gone to the principal several times, pointing out that Todd's mom was abusing her position. She was bullying teachers to give her kid an edge. Her son would even brag about how he could get away with not doing homework in other classes, because mommy would make sure nothing came of it. But the principal had failed to act. He had declared that each teacher was sovereign in their classrooms. So long as nothing illegal happened, he would not intervene. He was a very unprincipled principal. So I made a decision to delete the nepotism happening. I couldn't just change my grades in her class. She monitored my average like a hawk. So I went nuclear. I went into that subdirectory and deleted every single file in it. But the principal had shared his whole user's desktop directory. So I emptied the recycling. I completely wiped every trace of grading software on that computer, because the idiot didn't even put a password on the computer. So, from the desktop subdirectory, I was able to access everything. This was in the very last couple of days of school. There were no hard copies gradebooks. There were no backups. There was nothing remaining to even prove that the school year ever occurred. On the final day of school, we get called into an assembly. The principal is visibly disheveled, shaken, and upset. Not even angry, just broken. He announced that the entire year of grades were totally lost. The school didn't know what to do, because there were no hard copies. They couldn't recover the data, because they cheaped out and didn't purchase a backup system. All they could do was reinstall the software. But on grading software, if there is no grade to input, then what does it default to when showing the grades of the students? A 100%. Every single student in that school got valedictorian of their class that year, 100% all around. Heck, even a few kids got enough of a boost from that final year that they got to graduate on time instead of being held back. Next year, we had a new principal. I was held slightly suspect since everyone knew of my tech background, but nobody could prove anything. Even the PCs in the computer lab didn't have usernames or passwords, so there was no way to link me to anything. That following year, security cameras and passwords were put in the computer lab. Story 4. A few months ago, I lost my job as a software developer when the startup I was working for went belly up. With bills piling up and no immediate prospects in my field, I turned to driving to make ends meet. It wasn't ideal, but I figured it would be temporary. Little did I know that this job would lead me to one of the most bizarre encounters of my life. It was a Friday night, and I had been driving for about 6 hours straight. The city was alive with people heading out to bars and clubs, which meant steady business for drivers like me. I was tired but determined to make a few more bucks before calling it a night. That's when I got a ping for a pickup at one of the swankiest bars downtown. I pulled up to the curb, and that's when I saw her stumbling out of the bar, clearly intoxicated. She was wearing a designer dress and holding a purse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. As soon as she got into my car, I knew I was in for a rough ride. I greeted her politely and asked for her destination. Her response was far from courteous. She slurred her words, calling me a peasant and ordering me to just drive, saying she'd tell me when to stop. I bit my tongue and started driving. I'd dealt with drunk passengers before, but something about this woman's attitude set me on edge. About 5 minutes into the ride, I felt something on my shoulder. To my horror, I realized she had propped her feet up on my seat, her legs resting on my shoulder. I asked her politely to put her feet down, explaining that it wasn't safe while I was driving. Her response was indignant. She demanded to know if I knew who she was, as if her identity somehow justified her behavior. I tried to explain that it didn't matter who she was, and that her actions were dangerous and inappropriate. She became even more belligerent, insisting that because she was paying me, she could do whatever she wanted. She declared her current desire was to rest her feet. The smell coming from her feet was overwhelming. It was a mixture of sweat and something I couldn't quite identify, but it was making me nauseous. I pleaded with her, telling her that her feet smelled really bad and that I couldn't drive like this. She took offense at my comment about the smell, insisting her feet smelled like roses and that I should feel honored to have them so close. I tried to focus on the road, but the smell was getting worse. I could feel my eyes watering. I made one last attempt to reason with her, explaining that I couldn't breathe properly and asking her again to put her feet down. Instead of complying, she decided to try and bribe me. She fumbled with her purse and pulled out a wad of cash, waving it in front of my face and telling me to shut up and drive. That was the last straw. I reached up and pushed her legs off my shoulder. It wasn't rough, but it was firm enough to make my point. What happened next caught me completely off guard. I felt a sharp pain on the back of my head as her hand connected with it. She shouted at me, accusing me of assault and threatening to report me and have me arrested. My head was throbbing, and I could feel my anger rising. I'd had enough. Without a word, I pulled over to the side of the road. We were on a quiet street, lined with closed businesses and darkened storefronts. I told her to get out of the car. She seemed shocked, asking if I knew where we were and insisting that I couldn't do this. I repeated my demand, unmoved by her protests. She threatened to sue me and take my job, but I stood my ground, telling her I didn't care who she was or how much money she had. I informed her that she had assaulted me and I wasn't driving her another inch. She started screaming and throwing a tantrum, but I remained firm. Eventually, she got out of the car, still yelling threats and insults. I didn't wait around to hear them all. As soon as her door slammed shut, I drove off, leaving her on the sidewalk. My hands were shaking as I drove away. I knew I'd probably get a bad rating, maybe even a complaint. But at that moment, I didn't care. I felt liberated. As I drove home, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Here I was, a former software developer, kicked out of my comfortable tech bubble and thrust into the wild world of late-night ride-sharing. And now I had a story that none of my old coworkers would believe. The next day, I woke up to a message from the ride-share company. My heart sank as I opened it, expecting to see a notice of termination. Instead, I was surprised to find a different message entirely. It turned out that the woman had indeed filed a complaint against me. However, the company had reviewed the dash cam footage from my car, which I had forgotten was even there, and had seen the entire incident unfold. Not only was I cleared of any wrongdoing, but they also informed me that the woman's account had been permanently banned from the platform. As an added bonus, they gave me a small bonus for handling the situation professionally and prioritizing my safety. I couldn't believe it. For once, karma had actually worked in my favor. I decided to treat myself to a nice breakfast with my unexpected bonus, feeling a sense of vindication. As I sat in the diner, sipping my coffee and relishing my small victory, I couldn't help but wonder about the entitled woman. Did she make it home okay? Did she learn anything from this experience? Probably not, I concluded, but at least she wouldn't be terrorizing any more drivers on this platform. I picked up my phone and opened the rideshare app. It was time to get back on the road. Who knew what adventures awaited me today? Story 5. I, 25F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my fiancée, 27M. We have a 6-month-old son. My younger sister, Mia, fake name, 20F, recently started attending a university that's closer to where I live than both my parents' places. Because she needs to get to class early in the morning, my fiancé and I allowed her to move into our spare bedroom. She's been living with us since January. There's a set of rules I've been having Mia follow since she moved in, mostly to make sure everyone can live peacefully. One of the most important rules concerns arriving after my son's bedtime, usually between 19H and 20H. Mia is allowed to come home however late she wants, as long as she doesn't make too much noise. The door to the apartment has an electronic keypad lock, and the one we use also has a normal lock under it. Everyone has a copy of the key, but we all prefer typing in the password. However, the keypad is very noisy, and my son's nursery isn't far from the door. Every time the keypad is used after I've put the baby to sleep, he wakes up. So naturally, the rule about getting home late includes not using the keypad. Everyone, including Mia, has known about this since day one. At first, we had no problems. But now that Mia has gotten used to college life, she's been going out at night frequently. This past month, she has arrived home after midnight every Friday and Saturday night. She always forgets the "don't make too much noise" rule, and she has, on multiple occasions, used the keypad. My son wakes up crying every damn time. I'd sit her down and remind her of the rule whenever this happened, but she'd continue to do it. My fiancé and I got tired of putting our baby back to sleep because of that, so I changed the password and told Mia she was no longer allowed to use the keypad. She agreed and promised to try to make less noise. On Friday night this week, Mia went out with her friends. She came home very drunk at 4 a.m. and forgot that I changed the password. Not only did she use the keypad, she also got the password wrong so many times that she triggered an alarm. I was furious. Not only did my baby wake up crying, but I also got complaints from my neighbors. The next morning, I told Mia that I'm establishing a curfew. While living with me, she needs to be home by 20H. She won't be allowed to go out at night for the rest of the semester. Mia put up a fight, saying I have no right to ground her edit. I never use that word like this or dictate what she does with her free time, but I held my ground. I told her she'll be free to do as she pleases when she has her own place and raises her own family. While living with mine, she has to do as I say. She told our parents about this. Our mother and stepfather are both on my side. Our father is on Mia's. He's saying I'm not her mother, and I have no right to treat her like a child. He also thinks it's unfair to do this to her over a drunken mistake. Update. Before I start this update, I want to recommend reading my comments on my previous post. There were many questions that I was able to answer there. It's very hard to explain my relationship with my younger sister in proper detail, but I will say that, while I love her dearly, Mia has always been a very inconsiderate person. I have countless examples. She almost didn't attend our cousin's wedding last year because she didn't want to walk to the venue, which was 2 blocks away from our mom's place. We shared a bathroom when we were younger, and she'd insist on having the top drawers because she didn't want to crouch down, but she was cool with me doing so. She slept through my college graduation and didn't apologize for it. I'm bringing this up now because whenever I asked Mia why she kept forgetting to use her key, her excuse was that looking through her bag took too long and the keypad was quicker. In her head, bothering other people is better than slightly inconveniencing herself. After I established the curfew, Mia tried different ways to make me change my mind. She'd talk about not being able to cancel her tickets for Party X, or about the fun her friends had at Party Y. She'd show me her developing LinkedIn profile, and tell me she had learned her lesson and would be more responsible. At first, I really didn't want to have to kick her out, which many of you suggested, but I have limits. A few days ago, I heard her complaining to her friends on the phone about her bitch of a sister who wouldn't let her do anything. Later that day, I asked her which of our parents she planned on moving in with. Cue more fighting. I managed to tell her that I had no obligation to continue housing her for free. If she couldn't respect my family, Mia could either move back in with our parents or continue living with me for the low price of respecting my infant son and stop complaining about it. We did have a very productive conversation afterwards. I managed to get a lot off my chest, as did my sister. Mia apologized for everything. She admitted she'd been selfish, promised she'd make efforts to change and mature. I'm a strong believer that people can change, which is why I'm not kicking her out right now. But I made it very clear that Mia is on thin ice, and the next time she does anything like this will be the last time she ever sees the inside of my home. The curfew will continue until the end of the semester, as originally planned. My father also agreed to pay for Mia to go back to therapy. It helped her a lot when she was younger, so I'm hopeful about the future of this living situation. I also want to thank those who suggested a white noise machine. My son is not a light sleeper. The keypad is just very loud and startles him awake. But my fiancé and I are still looking into getting one. Anything that helps our baby sleep better is welcome. Story 6. Okay, you guys called it. A little under a month ago, my fiancé and I kicked Mia out of my apartment. This actually had very little to do with the keypad thing. After my last post, things were relatively peaceful for a while, and then June came and Mia decided to go back to her old ways. At first, it was just run-of-the-mill entitlement. She started taking my stuff without permission, whining whenever my baby cried and complaining about having to do everything, literally just her own laundry. All of that was more annoying than unbearable, so I just take my stuff back and let her clothes stink. Then, early in September, Mia went on a holiday beach trip with her friends. The day after she left, I noticed my diaper bag and one of my son's blankets were missing. Both were expensive gifts my best friend gave me for my baby shower. I checked every room in the apartment and found all of the items that had been in the diaper bag dumped on Mia's bed. She had emptied the bag to use it as extra luggage. The blanket was in a separate pocket, so she took it by mistake. Later, when I got them back, they were both dirty and sandy. I called Mia as soon as I found the items. Her reasoning for taking the diaper bag was that she didn't want to empty her school bag, and her computer wouldn't fit anywhere else. She also called me dramatic when I told her to apologize. That's when I kicked her out. I told her that once she got back, she'd have 1 week to grab her things and move back to either of our parents' places. My sister spent the rest of her trip trying to convince me otherwise. She also tried to get my parents on her side. My mom told her she brought it on herself. My father did try to convince me to be nice, but I told him I already had been. Mia tried to pick a fight about it when she got back from her trip, but I didn't budge. She moved out officially a couple weeks ago. My mom is making her save money so she can pay me back for the almost 8 months of rent she owes me. To be honest, I'm writing this mostly to vent. Being an older sister is exhausting. The house is always on fire, but you can never be the one freaking out. You're like a second mother, but not an actual parent, so your younger sibling feels no need to respect you. At least that was my experience growing up. My mom is fantastic, but she still acknowledges that I was basically Mia's third parent. My father was a good dad, but a mediocre parent, and he refuses to understand that. He also doesn't accept that after the divorce, I was more responsible for Mia than he was. I love my sister dearly, but she's always treated me as an afterthought. For a few years, she'd contact me almost exclusively when she needed a ride. I'd spend a shit ton of money on presents. She'd give me a $2 gift 2 months after my actual birthday. This happened 3 separate times, including this year. The list goes on. It always felt like I was the last thing on her mind. I'm not saying I was perfect, but I was always there for her. I will always love my sister, and I do believe she loves me too. But I also understand she's too selfish to realize she treats me poorly. I have to focus on my son, and I can't put up with Mia's immaturity right now. Do I regret letting her move in with me? No. Do I regret not kicking her out back in May? Also no. To be honest, I think I needed that. Knowing I tried has always helped me sleep at night. Plus, living with Mia wasn't all bad. Accompanying the Drake-Kendrick-Lamar feud with her was pretty fun at first, at least. My sister and I are on speaking terms. She was pissed at first, but got over it once she realized that literally no one was really taking her side. She's back to transitioning between our parents' places every week. I don't miss that lifestyle. Mia hates it, as it takes her longer to get to her classes every morning. She's apologized, but I'm not letting her move back in with me. My son's turning 1 in a couple of weeks. Mia is invited to his birthday party, but I'm not expecting her to show up. My fiancé and I are getting married in a little under a year, and she's invited to that too. I hope my sister can learn to be more considerate, and that we can improve our relationship someday. But I'm done being the only one putting in the effort. This will be my final post. Thank you, Reddit.